The sage of Khetwadi, 10th Lane, Bombay, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, entered his Mahasamadhi on 8th September 1981 at 7:32 p.m. On the 13th day after his departure, a meeting of the devotees was held in Lakshmi Bagh, Bombay, under the chairmanship of Mr. P.D. Kasbekar, when many devotees paid their reverential tributes to Maharaj through their speeches. Amongst them was Mr. S.K. Mullarpattan, who spoke as follows. Friends, you have already heard a very touching speech and a moving poem recited by Srimati Dungaji Bai, and you have been raised to great devotional sublime heights by her recitation. Therefore, probably, my talk will bring you down to the gross earth on which we are firmly placed, as I want to start right from this level. Now, to say that I shall talk on Sri Maharaj would be foolish and precocious on my part, because to talk on Sri Maharaj, I must know Sri Maharaj, and to know Sri Maharaj, I must know myself. This has been his fundamental teaching. Friends, this would be something like an earthworm trying to explain about space and cosmos. Nevertheless, the talk must go on, and I must talk about that personality through which the very Parabrahman spoke and expressed itself. So when I say I am talking about Maharaj, it is about that body through which the veritable Parabrahman talked to us, and it was guiding us by coming down to our level and leading us upwards spiritually. Friends, Sri Maharaj was about 80 years of age when I came in contact with him. He was very active and energetic. His talks used to be very impressive and penetrating. Whenever he would talk, although he might not be well just prior to talks, he would get himself energized as the talks would proceed, and with the development of talks, he would be radiant with energy. That used to be his health. After the talks, he would go out, that is, after the talks of about couple of hours, he would walk with us in the hot sun for a distance of about 2 kilometers. Then we would go to a lassi shop and drink lassi. That used to be our daily morning program. In those days, the morning talk, which used to be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, and the evening talk from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. So you can just imagine, at the age of about 80 to 82 years, he was giving talks daily for over 3 to 3.5 hours. His health was excellent, and I was told by his son, Mr. Badi Seth, that he suffered no illness of serious kind except some minor ailments like cold, cough, and he was never confined to bed. In the year 1978, one Dr. Rajgopal of Jaslok Hospital visited Maharaj, not to examine him, but to pay him his respects. He found that Sri Maharaj's voice was little hoarse, and the doctor expressed his desire to examine his throat, because he was probably a specialist of throat cancer. He took Sri Maharaj to Jaslok Hospital, and after examination suspected cancer of throat. He wanted to carry out biopsy for further tests, but Maharaj at that time did not agree. However, Maharaj continued his talks as usual from 1978 to 1980 without any break. Then again in April 1980, his voice got more hoarse. So Dr. Kale, their family doctor, examined him and found some constriction in the throat. And the doctor sounded a note of caution. So early in 1980, Dr. Kale insisted that he must be re-examined, and with the special efforts and persuasion of Mr. Sapre and Dr. Kale, he was taken to a hospital and a biopsy was done and tests were carried out. The results indicated that cancer had developed, the most dreaded disease. But this had no effect on Maharaj. He used to say, "What is cancer after all? I am not afraid of death. This I amness, the birth itself, is the beginning of cancer, is the beginning of suffering, and I am not all that. So if at all any doctor treats me, it will be actually my body and not me, the absolute." Later on, since Maharaj was not prepared to get himself treated, Mr. Ghia Seth insisted that Sri Maharaj should be shown to the best cancer specialist in Bombay, that is, one Dr. Paymaster. So he was taken to Dr. Paymaster, who told Maharaj in confidence the seriousness of the disease, describing vividly all the serious and unbearable sufferings of a cancer patient in case proper treatment was not given in time. But this did not move Maharaj, and he refused to have any chemotherapy or radiotherapy treatment for his disease, nor would he agree for hospitalization. Meanwhile, a close disciple of Maharaj, Mr. Srikant Gogte, suggested homeopathic treatment and recommended a homeopathic doctor from Malvan, the native town of Maharaj, one Dr. Suvarna, who had specialized in cancer treatment. And so, Dr. Suvarna's treatment was started. We felt this had some good effect, as no serious inroads were made by the disease on his throat once the treatment started. He was taking his normal food, solid as well as liquid. His talks were going on all right, quite energetically. Like that, everything went on quite smoothly. Meanwhile, a host of experts such as Ayurvedic Vaidyas, Nadi Vaidyas, acupuncture experts and allopathic doctors visited him from time to time. Initially they examined him, and later on they offered to treat him. An acupuncture expert tried his treatment for 4 days, but Maharaj was not inclined to continue it. A Nadi Vaidya on examination gave him some oil as nasal drops for treatment. These treatments gave temporary relief. The interesting part during all the treatments was that no expert would give any hope of cure. Rather, they would express their fear that the end would come in the course of the next 2 or 3 months. But the end did not come up as was feared by them, although some 6 to 8 months passed by. At this stage, since what was anticipated did not happen to Maharaj, the expert suggested that it was all probably due to the spiritual attainments of Maharaj, and that their medical expertise did not work on him. However, from 18th August 1981, the final disease took charge of him. In the meanwhile, due to his old age, the frequency and duration of his talk came down considerably. From 2 hours, it came down to 1.5 hours, and then to 1 hour, and lately to half an hour only each time. Many times, out of sheer weakness, he was not able to come up on the mezzanine floor. During such times, we played the cassette tapes of his recorded talks. On the 18th August 1981, he had an attack of pneumonia. He developed little cough and congestion of lungs. Dr. Kale, after examining him, started antibiotic treatments. This brought down the temperature and everything appeared under control. But the weakness was too acute and Maharaj almost stopped talking. Then on the 6th September, Maharaj gave the final signal. He said, within the next 3 days, I will quit, which meant the end would come in the course of the next 3 days. But we did not take this seriously, because many a times earlier, whenever we inquired about his health, he had said, what health? The very next moment I may not be there. So in the same lighter vein, we did not take the 3 days notice in right seriousness. Then on the 8th September, we found him rather better, much better than what the condition was in the previous 2 days, although he was not able to walk. He was resting and lying on the bed only. That morning, he had his normal tea. After some time, he took some milk also. Then he had his shave, and at about 11 o'clock, he took his porridge also. Normally, whenever porridge was brought by Maya Vahini, that is the daughter-in-law of Maharaj, he would protest and refuse to take it. But then Maya Vahini, with lot of persuasion, would force him and coax him to take it, and under protest somehow he would have it. But surprisingly, this time there was no protest at all, and he readily took the porridge, and we thought, hopefully, that he was on way to health, least suspecting that this was the last stage. Then as usual, at about 11:30, while I was leaving the place for my house, he looked at me and said with gestures, "Are you going to leave me in this fashion and going?" Then I waited for half an hour more and left for my home at the instance of Mr. Babi said, when Maharaj was asleep. That day early morning, Dr. Kale had come. He had examined him and suggested to Mr. Babi Seth that oxygen should be given to Maharaj. So Babi Seth had asked me to find out about the availability and place where oxygen could be obtained. So in the evening, I left my house early for the ashram, and on my way, after making enquiries about the availability of oxygen, reached the ashram at about 5:30 p.m. Mr. Babi Seth then told me that Maharaj was in a serious condition from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. as he was having a sort of heavy breathing. And both Babi Seth and Mayavani were much worried as there was nobody else in the ashram and they did not know what should be done. Maharaj was sleeping on the bed. I felt his feet and palms. They were not warm, rather cold. So we applied hot water bottles for fermenting his feet and palms and also massaged them to develop warmth. I suggested, Babi said, that we should better get an oxygen cylinder immediately and administer the gas to him, as the breathing was not then normal. It appeared shallower. Then I rushed to the shop, which was just being closed, collected the cylinder and hastened to the ashram by 6:45 p.m. and immediately started giving oxygen to Maharaj. Just prior to giving oxygen, I just felt if Maharaj was really serious about quitting, about shedding off his body. Therefore, I lowered my head, closed his ears and said, "Maharaj, the new apartment will be ready next month. It is our earnest desire that you should bless it with your occupation." In reply, Maharaj folded his palms together and with a firm nodding of his head expressed with gestures that it was not meant for him, while pointing towards his body. Still, we were not inclined to take it seriously, but interpreted it as his usual disinterest in worldly matters. After this, oxygen was given to Maharaj, and after some time, say at about 7 or 7:10 p.m., I asked him loudly Maharaj, are you feeling better? He nodded his head, indicating a clear no. That was the last communication we could have with him, because later on, though his granddaughter Savi called him loudly, Gigi, Gigi, there was no response. At this stage, I was standing close to him, near his head. Further down, Mr. Veermole, Miss Vanaja, my brother, were standing, massaging and pressing his hands, legs and feet, and fomenting them with hot water bottles. At this time, all his family members and Balsekar were also present in the room. All along, I was watching his breathing at close quarters and feeling the warmth of his palms. I felt the palms were getting cooler and cold, while the breathing got shallower and shallower gradually, and finally it came to a halt forever. The watch indicated the time as 7:32 p.m. I felt his pulse. There was no pulse. I looked at Babi Seth and said, "It is all over." It was amazing and strange that during all the time while I was with Maharaj, along with Veermole, Vanaja and my brother Gurunath standing close to him, watching his final departure, I did not feel any sort of sadness. I felt as if I was putting to sleep a small infant baby. It never occurred to me then that Maharaj was an old man, but it was just a baby, an infant baby being put to sleep. But it was an eternal sleep. So, everything was over. Messages were sent to persons concerned, and people started pouring in by night. Next day, that is Wednesday, the 9th September 1981, the Kendra, that is the trust, took over. Maharaj's Guru Bandhus insisted that it was not a moment of sorrow or sadness, but a moment of festivity, of Mahayoga, an ultimate yoga, merging of the self into the absolute. So as desired by them, the Kendra arranged a magnificent, gorgeous procession to take the sacred body of Maharaj. For this purpose, they arranged a decorated truck which was escorted by a colorful band of players with intermittent fireworks. About 250 to 300 persons made up the procession, which started from the 10th lane Khetwadi at about 12:30 noon. Most appropriately, the place for cremation was decided upon the Valkeshwar Banaganga cremation grounds, where the mortal remains of Maharaj's Guru were also cremated in 1936, and where a Samadhi shrine in the Guru's memory was also built. About the procession, an interesting incident should be narrated. Just a couple of months back earlier, to make Maharaj comfortable, a reclining chair was specially brought by one Joseph Noilars of Belgium all the way from Brussels on the 5th July 1981. Maharaj had used the chair because it was so comfortable and convenient quite a few times while giving talks and attending Aarti. In this very chair, Maharaj's body was placed in a sitting posture, and it was carried in the procession on the decorated truck. Thus the chair, which Joseph had specially brought with so much devotion and love for Maharaj, served him well even in his last journey. The procession reached cremation ground at about 3 p.m. After performing the usual bhajans and aarti at the Guru's Samadhi, Maharaj's body was consigned to the flames by 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 9th September 1981. Now, friends, I would like to express our sense of gratitude to various persons who were responsible for the comfort and sustenance of Maharaj in the Vanamali building in the past few years. First of all, to Dr. Kali and Dr. Suvarna of Malwan, both of whom did so much to keep his illness under control for our sake in the last 16 months. Then to Maharaj's sevakaris, the attendants, who served him so well for over a number of years by massaging him and doing all sort of odd jobs for him. To one Mr. Pundalik, who it seems looked after him for well over 40 years. I have not seen him yet, but I suppose he is somewhere here in the hall presently. To Mr. Iranna, known affectionately as just Anna, he served him for nearly 25 years. He used to visit him both morning and evening, daily, to massage his body and press his head and do many jobs for him. So also Mr. Korgaonkar and Mr. Virmole, who also looked after Maharaj for a number of years. Later on, during the last 2 to 2.5 years, one Mr. Ramchandran, a Tamilian and an employee of the State Bank of India, joined the group. Every day morning, he would serve Maharaj for nearly 3 to 4 hours before going to his office. Probably he was the last man to leave Maharaj in the mornings, after the morning session. So also Miss Vanaja. If you look at Vanaja, you might think she is just an ordinary, simple, not much educated lady and very unsophisticated. But let me tell you, she has a doctorate in mathematics and she gives lectures to postgraduate students at the University of Bombay. She is Dr. Miss Vanaja. Before going to the university daily, she would visit Maharaj first in the morning and attend to him and do quite a few jobs for him. To another young lady, a Canadian by name Holly, I would like to offer her a grateful thanks. Her profession was acting. After earning enough money in Canada, for a few months she would make a beeline to Bombay to Maharaj to serve him and attend on him for nearly 6 to 8 months at a stretch in a year. Our grateful thanks go to another young lady from abroad by name Mine. She was about 25 years young, a Vietnamese, having French citizenship and hailing from Paris. She was a nurse by profession. After earning sufficient money in Paris and conserving enough for a stay in India, she would come to Bombay for a stay of a few months in a year to listen to the teachings of Maharaj and to serve him. She was here for nearly a year this time and left Bombay for Paris just a few days, maybe a week or 10 days prior to Maharaj's Mahasamadhi. Before her departure, she offered her respects at his feet while he was lying on his bed. She said, "I am going," with tears welling up in her eyes, and left him. Suddenly, Maharaj sat up in his bed and made gestures to call her back. When she arrived, Maharaj took her hand and warmly shook it in spite of his weakness and said so lovingly, "Okay, you can go." It was very touching. Last but not the least, our thanks should go to his family members, to his son Babiseth and Maya Vaini, his daughter-in-law, to his daughter Prabhatai and grandchildren Savi and Niju. Because of this family, Maharaj was kept in the family fold and was thus available to us in Khetwadi, Bombay, for our benefit. Had it not been for them, Maharaj would have been in the Himalayas or somewhere else out of our easy reach. Because of their love and affection, Maharaj continued to stay in Vanmali building at Khetwadi till the last. There appears to be some misunderstanding about Maya Vaini. Being rather blunt and outspoken, she was not understood correctly. Behind her superficial harshness, she did have love and affection for Maharaj. Only she could coax and persuade him to take some nourishment by way of porridge or milk during his illness. Otherwise, Maharaj would listen to nobody. Now regarding Babi Seth, he appeared to be a non-doer and inactive, but he rose to the occasion when the need was felt. During the last few months, because of Maharaj's illness, he left charge of their bidi shop to servants and made himself available fully for the service of Maharaj in the house. When suggestions were made to him to employ an attendant such as a nurse or ward boy, he refused to have any of such mercenary outsider, saying, when we, that is myself, my wife and sister, are there to nurse Maharaj, why should we employ outsiders? They won't look after him so affectionately. Now, friends, with the departure of Maharaj into Mahasamadhi in the Vanamali building, the ashram or the residence of Sri Maharaj in this building has acquired special significance and sanctity. It was the very place where Maharaj led his family life like an householder. He prospered materially and also lost materially. But in this place only, he gained spiritually the highest. He had the blessings and initiation from his Guru. He did his sadhana and he had self-realization at this place. And finally, he entered into Mahasamadhi at this very place. Therefore, you will agree that this ashram or the residence of Maharaj has acquired a unique spiritual sanctity, a holy atmosphere. A few months back, when we knew that erelong Maharaj would quit us, I asked him during a question-answer sessions whether the house could be retained as an ashram. In response, Maharaj immediately replied, yes, it can be kept up as an ashram. After a little while he added, but how can my son look after two establishments after shifting to the new apartment, the ashram and his own house? To this we requested him that he should not worry about it, but that he should just bless the scheme. So now Babi Seth has decided that the place would be retained as an ashram, where the tradition of bhajans and arti would be continued and where the recorded talks of Maharaj would be played. I am sure the Kendra, that is the trust, will offer all the help and cooperation to Babi Seth to maintain the place as an ashram when Babi Seth and family would shift to the new apartment. Friends, now having talked at length on the last days of Maharaj and persons who looked after him, I would like to express my gratitude to other great persons who made the spiritual discovery of Maharaj. First of all, to Maurice Friedman, who was responsible for editing and writing the talks of Maharaj in English, and to Sadhakar Dikshit of Chetana Publications for getting them published in the book titled I Am That. Friedman sent copies of the book to many places around the world, with the result many earnest seekers from various corners of the world, after going through the book, paid visits to Maharaj. At least I remember 3 Russians visited Maharaj, so also Yugoslavians, Polish, Dutch, Belgians, Italians, French, Swiss, Swedish, Britishers, Spanish, Germans, Canadians, Americans, Japanese, Mexicans, even from Sao Paulo, South America, and also from Africa and Afghanistan. I must also thank Mr. Sapre for initiating the talks of Maharaj and putting them on firm ground, because it was Mr. Sapre who started the morning sessions of Maharaj's talks. Then we must also thank Jean Dunn for writing an article of Maharaj in the Mountain Path periodical. After reading the article, many persons discovered Maharaj, amongst whom were Balsekar, Ramchandran, Vanaja, etc. Here our gratitude should go to Vanaja for recording most of the talks of Maharaj on her own cassette tapes with her own tape recorder I am sure towards this she has spent quite a fortune, probably an amount not less than rupees 10,000. Now a few words about Maharaj's spiritual attainments. Often a question occurred to me, why Maharaj should thrive spiritually at Khetwadi? Why did a sage of such a stature bloom in Khetwadi, in the by-lanes of old Bombay? Whenever I visited him, I wondered at the junction of roads. One road led to the notorious red light area of Bombay, while the other one, Khetwadi 10th lane, to Maharaj's residence, to spiritual elevation. One could go either way, according to one's inclination, that is samskara. Then it occurred to me that a lotus blooms and thrives only in the mud and muck of a pond or lake. A fragrant and fresh flower blooms out of a plant fed with smelling dirty manure. So it was no wonder that Nisargadatta Maharaj, the very lotus of spiritual knowledge, bloomed in the Khetwadi area. Class, but by their sheer faith they attained great heights. By his talks he expounded higher and more subtle teachings, that is Advaita philosophy. Maharaj had mentioned many times that his talks during the past 2 to 3 years were more advanced than those in the book I Am That, and further added that persons who listened to the talks were very lucky. He also suggested that the cassette tapes on which the talks were recorded should be preserved carefully. Friends, I do not want to dwell on the teachings of Maharaj because most of you know them. But I want to mention some very relevant points. He had given hopes to all types of people who were earnest seekers. He said that seekers who were intelligent enough and who had done their homework would instantly understand his talks and teachings and stabilize in themselves right then. To others, he suggested picking up and remembering at least one single sentence from his teaching, and it would blossom in due course. He further said, "You should remember this visit to me. To remember the visit, you will have to remember me. And remembering me truly means remembering your own self to the exclusion of all thoughts." And finally, to those who could not understand all that, he said, "You do not worry. The planting of my teachings is already done in your heart and they will sprout in due course. Have faith, just do not worry." Friends, Miss Dungaji Bai had said in her talks that with the departure of Sri Maharaj, we are rendered almost orphans. But with due respect to her, may I say, I beg to differ with her. With his Nirvana, we are certainly not orphans. To say that we are orphans would be a disservice to him, because I think by planting his teachings in our heart, he has initiated the process of delivering ourselves into our true selves. Thus the process of liberation has already begun. Only let us abide and stabilize in beingness, prior to words, prior to concepts, and prior to mind, and the rest shall follow with his grace. Thank you.
Received from Alfred Freiberger, Hochstrasse 73, A2680, Semmering 73, Austria, Europe. The letter reads as under. Austria, 17th March 1986. Dear Mr. Mullarpattan, my name is Alfred Freeberger, 19 years old, and I live in Austria, Europe. I have your address from Mr. Noilars. I have read and studied all religions and sects, but in 1985 I read I Am That, and it was so overwhelming, and I knew Nisargadatta is my guru, my friend and leader, and I try to realize myself. I am in correspondence with many devotees, for instance, Jindan, Joseph Noilars, Satyamai, a devotee of Ramana Maharshi, etc., etc. I am especially happy that I can write with you because you are a direct disciple of Maharaj. Please, can you write me some sayings or teachings from Maharaj? How can I purify my mind? How to lose the ego? I want to concentrate me. Suddenly there come an unwelcome thought. What or how should I react? Is it useful if I always think of Maharaj? My favorite occupation or my hobby is to have always Maharaj's physical form in my mind. Is it good, or what would you recommend? Can you write me a mantram that Maharaj was using? My address is given. Mr. Alfred Freiberger, Hochstrasse 73, Austria 2680, Semmering, Austria, Europe. Yours faithfully, Alfred Freiberger. To Alfred, I have written a letter like this. My dear Alfred, thanks for your letter of 17th March 1986, which I received on the 24th instant. Indeed, it is unbelievable that you, a young lad of hardly 19 years, should be so deeply interested in the spiritual knowledge, the knowledge about one's own self. It was my good luck that I was close to Maharaj right from August 1975 till the last moment when he breathed his last. That is at 7:35 p.m. on 8 September 1981. I had also the good fortune to translate his talks from his native language Marathi into English along with other 4 translators. Now before I proceed to reply your questions proper, let me tell you the essence of his teachings as I understood it and assimilated. A human being, for that matter any live entity, any matter particle or subatomic entity, functions as such because the foremost basic motivating principle is the ultimate absolute, which is called the Lord, God, etc. However, the absolute is covered by various veils from the subtlest, which is nearest to the absolute, to the grossest. And all such veils are the products of the absolute only. In the human being, in a man, the absolute is covered by the grossest veil, his body. The grosser veil is the mind with turbulence of thoughts and uncontrollable thoughts. Next gross veil of mind is with good and less thoughts. Next gross state is with controllable thoughts. The next subtle state is the mind state with good thought-free mood. The next subtler veil of the mind is only with the sense of being or consciousness. The ultimate state, the highest or the subtlest, is the absolute, the awareness. In an ordinary human being, his attention always dwells at the grossest and grosser veils or levels. To elevate the attention from the grossest to the subtlest is spirituality or spiritual practice. For an intelligent person, the best spiritual technique is to witness the formation and movement of mind or thoughts in a very alert and relaxed manner. Our attention should be to watch and witness the mind process. In this process, when we dwell in a thought-free mental state, all guidance necessary for further spiritual progress emanates intuitively from inside, our own inside. This thought-free, our inside, is our sense of being, consciousness. That only is our real Guru. We should abide in this state. Of course, external embodied personalities are initially very necessary as our Guru, Master or Guide to direct us to our special inner Guru, the consciousness. Dear Alfred, if you are able to understand what I have written, please write. Then I shall proceed further. Best wishes, yours, S.K. Mullarpattan.